Okay, let's unpack this number. 352.4.
Hmm.
$8 billion dollars.
Yeah.
That's the projection for the global infant formula packaging market in 2025. I mean, just think about that.
It's huge.
We're not even talking about the formula itself, just the containers. That's
Yeah.
bigger than the entire economy of quite a few countries.
Right.
What does that tell you straight away?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is just the sheer scale, right? The scale of the global infant nutrition market overall.
Mm-hmm.
And this number, it really shows how vital that packaging is. You know, making sure the formula is safe, that people can get it, and that it stays good pretty much everywhere in the world.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, you sent over this recent industry report that's really zeroed in on this specific market.
That's right.
So our mission today really is to pull out the most interesting bits, the key takeaways, the important trends you need to know, the kind of surprising shifts maybe happening so you get a really solid handle on it without, needing to read hundreds of pages.
And it's worth remembering, looking at packaging, it's not just about the boxes and cans.
Right.
It gives you this unique window into bigger things. You can see how what consumers want is changing, how different parts of the world are growing, even how seriously people are taking environmental stuff.
Okay, so let's tackle the big number first. How big is this market right now or projected for 2025 and where is it headed?
Yeah.
We have that massive $352.48 billion for 2025. What happens after that?
Yeah, the report shows some pretty serious expansion ahead. By 2033, they're projecting the global market to hit USD $633.33 billion.
Wow, okay.
So that's a huge leap in just, 8 years?
Almost doubling. That's not just a little increase. It sounds like a really dynamic area.
Exactly. And to give you a sense of how steady that rise is, the compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, is expected to be 7.6% between 2025 and 2033. So, yeah, steady, strong growth.
Okay, enormous market growing fast. Got it. Now, where is this all happening? Geographically speaking, who are the big players?
So the report points to North America having the biggest piece of the pie right now, over 40% of the global market in 2025.
Okay.
That translates to about USD 130.42 billion. And even though it's the leader, it's still growing pretty well, a CAGR of 6.1% projected for that 2025 to 2033 period.
That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? You've got established brands, a big focus on infant health there.
Definitely.
And within North America, is it mainly the U.S. driving that?
Absolutely. The U.S. market is estimated at, USD 102.90 billion for 2025 with a 5.9% CAGR.
Right.
But Canada and Mexico are important too. Canada is around $15.65 billion, Mexico $11.87 million, and actually their growth rates are slightly higher.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Canada's at 6.9% CAGR, Mexico 6.6%. The report mentions things like, parents in the U.S. being increasingly health conscious and Canada having a real focus on sustainable packaging. Those are key drivers there.
Interesting how those regional priorities pop up. What about across the pond in Europe? How does it stack up?
Europe's the second biggest, holding just over 30% of the global share. That's about USD 102.22 billion in 2025 and projected to grow at a 6.6% CAGR. The key countries to watch there are the UK, Germany, and France.
Okay, can you give us a quick snapshot of those?
Sure. The UK market, about $17.17 billion in 2025, growing at 7.4%. And what's really noticeable there is the push for sustainability really influencing packaging choices.
Right.
Germany's a bit bigger, $20.24 billion, 6.8% growth, and they seem to have strong packaging technology driving things. France is around $9.4 billion, growing at 5.8%.
North America and Europe are the current heavyweights, but I have a feeling the really explosive growth might be happening somewhere else.
You're absolutely right. Asia Pacific, or APAC, it's already a big market, around 23% of the global share. That's about USD 84.60 billion in 2025. But here's the kicker. The projected CAGR for APAC is 10.3%. That's the highest anywhere in the world.
The 10.3, double digits.
Yeah.
That definitely signals a potential shift in where the market's heading. Which countries are really pushing that growth in APAC?
China and India are the big ones. China's market is estimated at $35.53 billion in 2025, growing at 9.8%.
Still huge growth.
Yeah, and while maybe historically things like birth rate changes mattered, now it's also rising incomes, a bigger middle class wanting, higher quality stuff.
Right. And India.
India is smaller, currently about $8.46 billion, but look at the growth rate, 12.2% CAGR projected.
12%.
Yeah. And there's a big demand starting to emerge there for sustainable packaging options too, alongside just the general economic growth. And the report also stresses how rapid urbanization across the whole APAC region is a major factor. Changing lifestyles mean more reliance on packaged goods.
That really paints a picture of a fast-changing region.
Yeah.
What about the other areas, South America, Middle East, Africa? Are they significant?
They're smaller pieces of the global pie, but definitely still important and growing. South America is over 5%,
Good.
about $13.39 billion in 2025, growing at 8.3%. Brazil's urbanization is a big factor there. The Middle East is around 2%, $14.1 zillion, but growing quite fast at 8.9% CAGR.
Faster than North America or Europe?
Exactly. Driven by things like more health awareness in places like Qatar or higher disposable incomes in Turkey. And Africa, while it's the smallest share now, around 1% or $7.75 billion, it's still projected to grow at a strong 7.9% CAGR. And the report actually notes some really creative, culturally specific packaging starting to appear in places like Nigeria.
Fascinating. So, okay, North America leads now, but it really does sound like APAC could become the center of this market in the coming decade. Let's switch gears to the actual packaging. The containers, what are the main types we're seeing?
Right now, cans are king. They really dominate the market for infant formula packaging.
White cans.
Mostly because they offer really solid protection. They're great barriers against moisture, oxygen, light, other contaminants, stuff that's absolutely crucial to keep the formula safe and make it last longer on the shelf.
Makes sense.
The main materials are aluminum or tin plate that's steel with a thin tin coating for corrosion resistance.
Cans definitely give you that feeling of, like, secure long-term storage. But you mentioned the report highlighted another type that's growing really quickly.
Yeah, cartons. They're pegged as the fastest growing segment.
Interesting. Why the shift towards cartons?
Several reasons, really. They're lighter, which is good for shipping and for consumers to handle. They're generally easy to store. And there's this growing feeling, or perception at least, that they're a bit more environmentally friendly.
Okay.
Maybe because they use less material sometimes, or because of improvements in recycling them. They're mostly used for the liquid, ready-to-feed formulas. And the report mentions there's quite a bit of innovation happening in carton design, too.
That move towards cartons definitely seems to reflect that eco-consciousness trend we keep hearing about. What about things like pouches? Flexible packaging.
Pouches are definitely important and growing too. Consumers like them because they're portable and, again, lightweight, very convenient. And you also see things like rigid plastic tubs, often with resealable lids. But yeah, the big story in formats is really the dominance of cans and this rapid rise of cartons.
Okay, so we've got the containers. What about what's inside? Does the type of formula powder versus liquid change the packaging picture much?
Oh, absolutely. Powdered formula still holds the biggest chunk of the market.
No, why is that?
Mostly cost and shelf life. It tends to be more affordable for many families, and it lasts a long time when stored properly.
Right.
And as we said, that powder usually comes in those cans, or increasingly in pouches and sometimes cartons. The main goal of the packaging there is just keeping it fresh, keeping anything bad out.
That makes sense. The powder has those advantages. But anecdotally, at least, it feels like you see more and more ready-to-feed liquid options now. Does the market data back that up?
It absolutely does. That ready-to-feed liquid segment is growing really significantly, really rapidly.
And the driver there is?
Convenience, pure and simple. For busy parents, caregivers.
Yeah.
You just open it and it's ready. No mixing.
Yeah, that's a big plus.
So these often come in single-use bottles or maybe pouches with things like little spout caps, making it easy to feed on the go. That growth really mirrors the demand for time-saving stuff in, our busy lives, especially for working parents.
Convenience is king then. So zooming back out, what are the big forces pushing this whole infant formula packaging market forward?
The report lists a few key drivers. One is just growing awareness among parents globally about the nutritional side of infant formula. More people are using it.
Okay.
Second, that trend of urbanization we mentioned, plus more working mothers, means a bigger need for convenient, reliable feeding options. Third, specifically, the demand for those portable, light pouch packagings is a big push.
Right.
And finally, just that general growing awareness and demand for eco-friendly packaging and sustainable food sources. That's influencing what people buy and what companies make.
Those all sound like pretty powerful forces tied into bigger societal changes. Is anything holding the market back? Any headwinds or challenges?
Yes, there's one major constraint highlighted. baby food is highly perishable.
Uh,
That fact, plus the risk that any flaw in the packaging could ruin the product, that definitely creates concern about quality and safety, which can slow things down a bit. It means you need special high barrier materials, sometimes preservatives, adding complexity and cost.
Makes sense. You can't afford mistakes when it's for infants. Okay, looking ahead then, what new trends in packaging should we be watching out for?
One really interesting emerging trend is portion-controlled packaging.
Oh, like single servings.
Exactly, pre-measured amounts. It offers huge convenience, makes feeding faster, easier, and helps ensure the baby gets the right amount of nutrients, takes the guesswork out. Could be great for travel, too.
That sounds really practical. Portion control. What else is coming down the pipeline?
The report also talks a lot about tech advances aimed at efficiency and sustainability. Things like better resealable pouches to keep powder fresh after opening, making cans lighter to use less metal and cut transport emissions, and just generally adopting more materials that are genuinely eco-friendly and easier to recycle.
Right.
So these aren't just about making life easier or greener, they can also help the product last longer, too.
So future innovation seems driven by both convenience for parents and this growing environmental responsibility. Now, this is obviously a huge global business. Who are the companies actually making all this packaging? Who are the big players?
Yeah, it's a very competitive space. You've got the big multinationals, but also smaller regional companies, too. The report names some key players that are dominant right now. Companies like Tetra Pak, Print Pack, Trivium Packaging, Logos Packaging, Griner Packaging.
Some familiar names from the wider packaging world there.
Definitely. Their leadership comes from having broad product lines, huge distribution networks, and, constantly innovating.
Any recent examples of what these companies or others are up to?
Yeah, a couple of examples were mentioned that kind of show the trends. Kraft Heinz, for their Plasmon baby food in Italy, worked on launching fully recyclable pouches.
Ah, the sustainability push again.
Exactly. And Plum Organics apparently redesigned all their packaging recently to be much clearer about the ingredients, responding to that consumer demand for transparency.
Interesting.
And the report lists a whole bunch of other major players, too. Amcor, Mondi, Sunoco, Apter Group, Berry Global, Crown Holdings, many, many others. It really shows how competitive it is.
It definitely sounds like a dynamic field, lots of competition, lots of adaptation to what consumers want and what the planet needs.
Okay.
Okay, so to wrap up our deep dive here, let's just quickly hit the main takeaways from this report.
Sure. So first, it's a massive market,
Yeah.
over $350 billion projected for 2025 and growing strongly.
Right.
Second, North America leads now, but Asia Pacific is where the fastest growth is happening, double-digit CAGR.
Okay.
Third, packaging formats. Cans are still dominant, but cartons are the fastest growing segment, often linked to being greener. Fourth, formula type. Powder has the biggest share, but ready-to-feed liquid is growing rapidly because it's so convenient.
Got it.
And finally, the key drivers pushing everything are things like nutritional awareness, urbanization, the need for convenience like pouches, and that big underlying trend towards sustainability.
That sums it up really well. A huge, complex market, probably more so than most of us think about day to day. It's really fascinating how these big global trends, urbanization, environmental focus, get reflected right down to how we package baby formula.
It really is, and it leaves you with a pretty interesting thought, doesn't it? Looking ahead, with APAC growing so fast and sustainability becoming such a massive priority everywhere, what kind of packaging innovations might we see become normal in the next 10 years? How will the industry juggle keeping formula safe, making it convenient for parents, and meeting those demands for being environmentally responsible, especially as the global picture keeps changing?